Boston, and I want to welcome you to the Poets Corner. I'm so pleased that we have such a great turnout today for love. Love is all we need, right? And who knew how many people would write epistolary poems? I didn't even know what they were before last year, but they're love letters. They're poems that are written as a letter. And we received more than 250 love letters in response to our open call for submissions. Along with several volunteer readers, we each read every single one. And then carefully, we felt like we were awash in all of this love. And we carefully narrowed it down to a baker's dozen mix that we're presenting, or that we invited people to present today. Not a judgment on any of the poems that all the rest of you who might be here today might have submitted, but these are wonderful poems that provided an interesting mix of different ways of looking at love. So before we get started, I want to tell you about a couple of upcoming events on the Poets Corner. On Sunday, March 5th, we have our first prose event in quite a while called Story, featuring authors Morgan Talty and Laura Bonazzoli. And they've each written short story collections that are linked in different ways by place, by character, and by backstory. And we'll hear Morgan and Laura read from their collections and then talk to us about the stories and the story behind the stories. And then on Sunday, April 2nd, we have Mark Burrows returning with a book launch of his poems by Hilda Domine called The Wandering Radiance. This was more than a decade-long project of translating poems by this very popular, very well-known German poet who had not been translated into English before. She's a German Jewish poet that went into exile and then returned to Germany. Mark will be joined by Domine's biographer and friend, Marion Tauschwitz, his publisher, Chris Nelson of Green Linden Press, and British literary critic and poet Hilary Davies, in a conversation about some of the very relevant themes in Domine's work. But now for today. I want to thank Sig Harvey for that wonderful image that you saw on the screen earlier, allowing us to use that in our dedication today to Catherine Seitz. Catherine is the co-founder of the Poets Corner, and for various health reasons, she's not been able to be a part of the operations for the past year. But she's here today for the dedication. And Catherine and I were part of a writing group when the pandemic hit, and we were sheltered in, and we were both craving community for our writing and craving getting to know other poets and writers in the area. And I said, I wanted to start something that would do this on Zoom. And was there anybody in my writing group that wanted to do it with me? And Catherine spoke up, yes, absolutely, with her inimitable enthusiasm. And we started out with monthly Zoom readings, inviting poets that we knew, and then inviting them to invite others and suggest other people. And we've created a community over the past almost 3 years now of around 3,000 people. And today we had just about 300 people register for this event. So if you know Catherine, and I think many of you do, one thing you know about her is she's enthusiastic, that she's inspired many other writers in their work, and that she connects, she brings people together, and she has ideas. And one of her ideas in that first year, as we came up to February, was to focus on love poems. And I may have been skeptical, how many people would want to write or hear love poems, but I was carried away, as I can be, by her enthusiasm. And then we received, like that first year, about 60 submissions, and we were just awed by that. And this year, more than 250. The selection process is always difficult, but it's also fun to create a lively mix of poets and poetry and different ways to talk about love. After almost every event that we hosted in those first 18 months, Catherine would call me up and she said, "That was fabulous. That was great. Don't you think I loved it?" And her enthusiasm would just carry me forward. And for every event, and to plan the next one and do more. So many people have been touched by Catherine's encouragement, her enthusiasm, her connection to other people, that we really wanted to dedicate this reading today, all about love, to Catherine. And so we're going to begin with one of the poems that was submitted by a dear friend of hers, Stephanie Smith. And Stephanie, although she's local to Maine, she's joining us from Oregon today, I think. Stephanie, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. And to my dear friend, Catherine, just wanted to let others know, I met Catherine at a dinner party, and we had the mutual reaction of, this is somebody I want to know. And if you know Catherine, she then lured me into one of her classes, and then lured me into one-on-one coaching. And then she didn't need to lure me, because we became dear friends in the process of working together. So when I heard about the love poems, I immediately decided I need to write my poem to Catherine. So Catherine, this is a poem for you. I am writing a love poem for you about forests, forests for bathing, one of your many loves besides ice cream and chocolate, reading and writing. Many a day you would suggest, let's go on that walk, down the private lane, through a wooded area, a small forest. We would stop, look at the moss, take in the green, the earthy smell. Look at the living trees, tall and majestic. Look at those fallen that are now nurturing other life. We took in the forest, its pattern, its comfort. We shared an Umwelt, bathed in the forest, arm in arm. I'm writing a love poem for you about your love, whose name was Forest. Many a day you've mentioned his name, told me stories of then and now. Forest in youthful pursuit of you, forest over the years, forest aging, reaching out, connecting, creating footprints on the path of lifetime longing by a man for you, a man named Forest. I'm writing a love poem for you to memorialize memories of these loves, for you and me, to bring smiles with images of the man and the trees, bathing in forests, you and me. I'm writing a love poem for you, with love for you and me.
That was beautiful, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you for writing that and for kicking off this reading with that wonderful poem for Catherine. Our next reader is going to be Debbie Walker Lass from Atlanta, Georgia. And Debbie's going to share her screen so you can actually see this poem because it's a very unique poem.
Thank you. This is called a poem to my grandmother who loved acrostics, and I made it into an acrostic, as you can see. About your death, we were informed via the attorney engaged by my uncle, your younger son, named for a king and coddled like one his entire lifetime. Dad was devastated to learn his brother didn't call to share the news, even though it was almost to be expected in this sawed-off family tree. Firstborn, last to know, Dad grieved and refused to argue over gold, expensive trinkets kept in a drawer, or anything else. Hapless, ill, yet determined to claim whatever his brother offered, I was recruited by the natural order of things to represent and make just what was already an injustice. Dad, entitled to half, accepted only the key to your desert mid-century home, dispatching me to clean up the labyrinth of your existence. Contained within walls suffused with deep memory, redolent with the splendor of two lives well lived, you and him. Nearly always together for over 60 years, you stood alone for 20 more. Opening the vermilion Spanish-style doors, I stepped back, your presence washing over me. The stately dolls lined up for a canceled reception. Queens dressed to the nines in satin and gossamer lace. Time-worn relics, the only friends that never left you in your advanced age. Schiaphobia set me back, away from these girls you personified as trusted confidants. But who else did you have? Hummingbirds, rabbits, unafraid of you. Your gentle nature honed in verdant fields. I'm sure it vexed you to miss even one feeding. So I put out suet, water, carrots with tops. Where does your humble, tenacious spirit rest? In the pages of books, birdsong? Xenagogue to my literary spirit, nurturer of a written word, I carried zero regrets for every moment we spent. I took one doll in a green velvet dress.
Thank you, Debbie. That's not easy to do, that kind of ABCDarian, and it's a beautiful poem. Love
Thank
that.
you.
Next up is Diane Teal from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm joining you from the foothills of the Sandia Mountains here in New Mexico. And you can find out more about my work on www.dianeteal.net. This is my latest book, Questions from Outer Space, which just appeared in 2022. So the poem that I'm going to read is Your Letter in My Pocket, which I thought was appropriate for this occasion because it honors the power of the epistolary tradition and makes the letter in the pocket a particularly passionate item, burning a hole in the pocket. It's a sonnet, and there's a mysterious note at the top of the poem, first in 1740 and later, as the speaker is fluid in time, and the poem suggests a connection across different eras. Your letter in my pocket, first in 1740 and later. Your letter burnt a hole in my pocket that winter. When I read your words, I will confess here, it was an unexpected turn. My hands much warmer than usual, tucked in my jacket, my mind traveling the distance. I walked a long way around, going past home, not even noticing a step, if my feet even touched the ground. As one between eras, fluid in time, I've missed such letters, but how did you do that? Touch my pocket with a single line and heat this bath, the steam rising where you lay flame to us by what remains unsaid, into the evening and the nights ahead.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Diane. That's lovely. And I wish I'd known you'd had that book when we did our night sky reading, maybe next year. I was muted. Sorry. Our next reader will be Sarah Burnett from Silver Spring, Maryland.
Hi, thank you, Meg, for organizing it. And today I'm going to read a poem from my book Seed Celestial, which came out in 2022. It's called Use Bottom Cushion for Flotation Device. I'm pretty sure you've heard that phrase before. And it's dedicated to my husband. Use bottom cushion for flotation device. Truth is, probably half the time I say something I don't mean to say, or wish I hadn't said, or it's nicer than saying what I'd really like to say, like where it reads bolted on the plane seat in front of us, use bottom cushion for flotation device, as a way of saying you're screwed. And maybe that's too obvious to say, but imagine if the plane went down over water. Wouldn't it have been nice, life-saving perhaps, if someone had said, your seat is a goddamn floaty, which also implies hope in its utterance that even on a plane precipitously descending, you might just survive. Seems better than saying nothing, a kind of Pascalian wager for language, for when you've nothing to lose but words, a seat cushion, and a hulking metal cage with wings buttressing a 30,000-foot descent. True, even if it's one of those things you wish you didn't have to say, but say it anyway, because the one time it's worth saying might be this time, and you've no way of knowing. It's why the tour guide at the historic cemetery we visited, Bonaventure, from where we're flying home on this plane of good or ill fortune, told us not to trample over the graves, to keep our voices low and walk respectfully between mowed rows of grass, line after line of mouths filled with dirt, because somebody once danced on Johnny Mercer's grave and someone else spat on their ancestor, and it might be said they'd both been waiting all their lives to do those things. It wouldn't have mattered what the tour guide said or didn't say, moved as they were to act without words. There are so many ways to say I love you in this world. Side-by-side burial plots, shared sticks of gum, picnics by the sea. There are so many ways to say I'm sorry. Side-by-side burial plots, shared sticks of gum, picnics by the pond. I feel there's an infinite number of lines I've crossed out for you, but that's not true. Just once I'd like to say something I mean, not like I mean it. I used to think the absence of suffering was happiness. I used to think happiness was finding something or someone you loved so much you'd do it over and over again, but now I think that's a kind of unsustainable masochism, which isn't what I meant to say exactly. The way I feel about you has nothing to do with planes or picnics or burial plots. It has nothing to do. It's like a puppy chasing its tail. It's why I don't sleep well if you're not lying next to me. It's why, in the event of a decompression, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with you by my side. I'd like you to know in the event of a water landing, an oxygen mask will appear in front of you, and I'll be that person who will help you put it on. I may even be that person who will forget to put it on herself first, the kind of person the announcement was written for. The kind of person who's made cloud animals by eyeing the vomit bag. You're the person I've written this poem for, the kind of person who doesn't read poetry, or only as an occasional shared indulgence like banana splits. I don't want an occasion to say that when I'm with you, I feel like putting coins in the jukebox. When I'm with you, I'm descending into the deepest part of my life with a complimentary beverage. I can rest my eyes now. Know what I mean? We don't have anything to lose.
What a delightful poem, Sarah. And if you would put the name of that book in the chat, I'm sure there are lots of people who would love to order it. So our next poet will be Peter Beckford, coming to us from Liberty, Maine.
Hi, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me here. Welcome to Maine if you're a ways off. Some people say Maine is the poet's corner of the country. I would say, as a means of introduction to the poem, which is named Oh, and One More Thing, that's the title. It as a love letter, it might help you to think of it as a love postcard, or maybe a love message on an answering machine. Maybe you're overhearing the guy leave this message. If it's on the page, if you're picturing it on the page, maybe you're reading someone else's postcard. Been known to happen. I knew a mail carrier. I met him at my friend's house where I sent a lot of postcards to, and this guy said he really liked my writing. So you could think of it that way. But just so that you start at speed, it's not a long poem, and the title is Oh, and One More Thing. Oh, and one more thing. Listen, Jack, after I go to Circle K for beer and bring home COVID-19, which kills me in spite of my courageous battle, I need you to grab my boots, the steel-toed Red Wings. Don't worry, they're in the mudroom. Look for 2 pair, Jack. Because Dean said using 2 pair makes them last as long as 3. And you know, whatever Minnesota Dean said, we believed. I've been keeping up with the leather ever since that shine in Logan Airport. The man said it was his pleasure because he respects work boots, which is like respecting me. I don't want them going to Goodwill, Jack. We're the same size. Just put them on and pretend you've done a day's work in your life. 2 pair of new boots, 1 less friend. Not bad, Jack.
Peter, thank you so much. You know, I can hear my husband laughing from the other room. So what a delightful poem. That's great. Our next poet will be Alice Bingham Gorman of Tennants Harbor, Maine. And Alice, I think, is going to read us a trio here of poems. Alice, you're still muted.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, you're good.
I particularly want to thank you and Catherine for all you have done through the years to encourage poets and writers. I am personally thankful to you both. My little 3 poems. The first one was written many, many years ago. Dear divorced husband, while standing midstream, I asked, do you love me? And you said, no. I blinked at my dreams, bobbing in the ripples, disappearing downstream. I reeled in the line I had cast out to you, the line lying slack in the still water. I turned and walked toward the other bank, grieving for the life we would never share, for the person I discovered was never there. The other 2 poems are both written to my beloved partner. Dearest David, throughout the many stages of my 80+ years, there was always you, not visible to the eye, nor fully formed as a living being, more a belief in what could be, a vision of 2 souls linked in space, drawn by a magnetic force, 2 people whose prophetic parallel lives led them to each other. Dearest David, my grandchild touches the wrinkles on my face, looks wistfully into my eyes and asks, "Are you still alive? Your skin feels so old," she says. "Can you still play, have fun, look forward to your birthday and Christmas?" "Oh, yes," I tell her, a smile confirming my words, a warmth rising in my body. I am alive. I can still play and have fun. I look forward to every day. I can't tell her how her life will someday be, whether she will still be alive when she is old. I can tell her my secret, my belief in love. I can share the joys I thought would never end, the sorrows I wondered if I could bear, the bloom of passion within my youthful body, the garden of pleasures through my middle years, my love of Verdi and Vermeer, of Dickinson and Yeats, my memories of love that cannot be taken away, memories that kept my heart open for another to enter, someone who has known his own pleasure and pain, another like you, who has kept your belief in love, kept your heart open for me.
Alice, that's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that poem with us. And when I let Alice know that we had selected her poems for this reading, she told me about an article that just appeared in Slate. Maybe you'll put it in chat about finding love in your 80s, I think. So
It's
thank you.
actually Salon.
Oh, Salon, you're right. Thank you. Yeah,
It's a
put it in.
wonderful, true article.
It's inspiring to all of us. So
Thank-
our last poet in this first half, I'm gonna switch off and let Margaret introduce the poems in the second half of this reading. But I'm gonna ask Margaret to read her poem first. Margaret Haberman is from Belfast, Maine.
Okay. Good. I can't believe how many people are here. It's so amazing and wonderful, and it's just great to see you all. I wrote this poem. I'm always inspired by these events because it gets me to start writing. It gives me that nudge, like, get off your butt, Haberman, and write something. And I wrote this poem for a very dear friend of mine, Saran Taylor. And I was putting on her ski boots, her cross-country ski boots that she gave me. I don't know, they're so old. And I started writing this poem. I met Saran in around 1988. I was 28, and this is going to be a bit of a heavy lift emotionally, but I'm going to get through it. Saran, I'm still wearing your old ski boots. The sharp edge on the zipper pull nips at my fingers every winter. They survive. One more year. You would recognize the faded purple laces, dirty yellow nylon, the slowly decomposing plastic. What strange equipment we've carried with us, thrown in the trunks of a succession of cars, skis for whatever the forecast, skates for the tiny moment of black ice on North Pond, or Mud Pond, where we used to meet on our way to work, driving the old Greenwood Road, you north, me south. I said it was the worst road in Western Maine. You took offense, defended even the potholes. You who could find pleasure laced onto any precipice. Your advice when I would have let fear stop me from skating on mud pond too soon. If we break through, we'll only sink to our thighs. I keep finding things with the simple ST signifying your presence, an invitation to the bike ride you called the Roadkill Classic. A tiny watercolor of 3 wild roses, a faded blue windbreaker. The year we drove to Quebec to ski 100 miles east to west, you only gave one bit of wisdom. When you get tired, focus on technique. Where does it turn from remembering to summing up? Twin red cowboy boots for $19 at Goodwill. Stevie Ray on the cassette playing Pride and Joy. Christmas pudding burning blue. A cold New Year's Eve with not quite enough warm clothes around a campfire in Red Rocks. A too small green tent in December on the ridge below Mount Washington. When you get tired. You've stopped ice skating, skiing, climbing up to Zealand Hut, maneuvering the stairs on your own. I swam 3 miles across the bay from Northport to Islesboro, the tide turning against me midway through. Swimming, the only thing I ever did better. Saran, far from shore, I was ready to stop. Then I'd see you, always out beyond me, looking back before disappearing around a bend. When you get tired, focus, Margaret. One good pull after the other. One more glide through the deep. Thank you. And we are going to have a short interlude of the Beatles playing All You Need Is Love. And then when we get back, we'll start with our second set of readers.
And that'll just be about a minute long, but if you need to run to the ladies' or men's room, go ahead.
Take over from Meg now for just introducing our next series of readers. And next up is Carl Little from Mount Desert, Maine, and with a poem called Yours. Carl?
Thank you, Margaret. That was a beautiful poem of yours and everybody else's. It's great to be here. I keep a running list of possible prompts for poems, random quotes, things I've heard, read, seen, typos, weird words. At some point in recent months, I jotted down the term trailing spouse. I didn't know what it meant, but had a vision of 2 people following each other through life. I looked up the term a few days ago, and it actually refers to a spouse who follows his partner from one place or job to another. I'd also heard a hidden brain program on NPR in which host Shankar Vedantam and his guest Clay Rutledge discussed nostalgia. There I learned that nostalgia, which was originally considered a neurological illness caused by demons, can be a mix of sadness and triumph, can inspire hopefulness, and may feature some rewriting or editing of the past, what Rutledge calls a psychological immune system. Anyway, these ideas, plus personal memory, made this poem. Yours. Dear love, we mourn our younger selves, the ones whose eyes sparked and shone when we caught a look as lights dimmed, when shyness turned to clothing strewn. And now the nights come on, covers crept under, bodies shifting toward the center, where warmth is held by sheets and breath is hushed and only the clock provides light. We listen hard for a sigh, my love, and hearing it, turn the other way, resigned to separate till morning. Let us no longer lament our looks and youth, but untuck the day as it arrives and wander through the splintered woods beyond the stakes that mark our lines, and take each other's hand where possible among the tangle, lead and follow, and vice versa, watching our steps in the snow that fell yesterday and brings light to a dark world. Yours, my beloved, forever yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That was lovely. And I love the introduction and what you've done with that trailing spouse. That was wonderful. And our next reader is Anna Dunlap from Denver, Colorado. And the poem is called Amaryllis in Winter.
Hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon, and I've so enjoyed the poems that have been read so far. This is such a unique program, and I want to thank Meg and the Poets Corner for hosting it. It sure beats the Super Bowl, at least for me. I haven't been this excited about Valentine's in a long time. So thank you for that. My poem is a bit of a non-traditional epistolary poem, I would say, because it's written not from one person to another, but from the perspective of a flower to its owner. And although this poem is certainly not in the same league, I was inspired by Louise Gluck's famous poem, The Wild Iris, which of course is written from the perspective of an iris. But back to those wonderful amaryllises. For those of you who may not be familiar with this flower, they produce spectacular blooms during the winter months, and every year I have one or two of them in my home over the holidays. And when they bloom, it is cause for celebration. The flower in this poem is hoping against hope that its owner will arouse its rhythms of renewal by keeping its bulb alive so that it can bloom again and again. But of course, as my favorite poetry teacher, Gregory Pardlow, said, what the poem is about is never what the poem is about. And I'll leave it to all of you to perhaps interpret its deeper meanings. Amaryllis in winter. You could be the one who believes in rebirth. I sense it in the way you slide a single finger along my turgid stalk, gently cup your hands around my pregnant blossom, contemplate my easy bisexuality, phallic and female and amorous tango, the climax to be a fire-breathing dragon of petals. You could be the one to arouse my rhythms of renewal. I see your hips sway to the lambada, as if you know my origins, the bohemian hippiastrum, how I envy the night stars and dancing queens, spreading unbridled on Brazilian hillsides, beguiled into splendor by spring, year upon year of vivid unfurling. I came to you smothered in wax, boxed and shipped from Holland, forced to flower in winter with no water, yet see how I hold your gaze. Withering has come. You slash me to the bulb, toss me in the bin, nothing but a dalliance. Next year another will stick out its green tongue, unwitting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. What a wonderful idea to have the poem be from the flower to the person growing the flower. Makes me think a little of the botany of desire. It was beautiful. And my amaryllis is sitting downstairs without its bloom. So now I'm going to think twice before.
Yes, think twice. I do.
Oh, thank you so much. Our next reader is Lois Ann from Rockport, Maine. And the poem is called It's 21 Years Now.
Thank you. And thank you, Meg, and thank you, Catherine. And I thank everyone here today. These poems have been so rich. A dear friend of mine had lung cancer that had metastasized to his brain, and he was in hospice at home. And on my way to sit with him, you know, to give his wife a bit of respite, suddenly my car filled with such intense perfume. You know, it was a February afternoon and I had to open all the windows. When I got to their house, I found out that he had passed that afternoon and that gardenias were his favorite flower. It's 21 years now for Ben. The anniversary of your death happens every year, so why am I still surprised when the scent of gardenias fills the room or the car, or lingers along a snowy woodland path where mine are the only footprints? This February, it's the aroma of tobacco when I open the car door. Is this you or someone else? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lois Ann. And I always love it when people introduce their poems and it gives us some sense of where they've come from and that the mystery of that. Just lovely. Thank you. Our next reader is Anne Bergeron from Corinth, Vermont. Corinth. I knew I would say that wrong, Anne. And the poem is called Love Letter on a Winter Morning.
Thank you. And actually, I say Corinth, so you said it correctly, Margaret. Okay. This poem is about being long in love with both a person who is my mate and the place where we live. Love letter on a winter morning. Dear one, today dawn comes in verse like a negative, the sky black and the heads of trees, silver silhouettes against ashen tuft of clouds, where sun waits to capture the last slender crescent of moon. I thought I could get myself beyond want. I thought that nothing was what I wanted. She wants the moon, I heard you say, and you were right. I did want to touch that smooth, sharp curve of light and feel how it carries its own dark weight, how the scythe culls and gleans, unafraid of itself. Sometimes we stand on an abyss, hungry and dark to each other, all pleasure held in the throat. But then daylight's umber smoke absorbs the fine curved tip of moon. And in the newfound body of morning, we break ourselves open with the day. Thank you.
Thank you. I really liked where that poem took us, and she wants the moon. Really lovely. Yeah, Meg just wrote the same thing. She wants the moon. Thank you so much. Maya Stein is our next reader from Northport, Maine, and the poem is called Sweetest Relief.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Poets Corner. And Margaret, I want to echo something you said about being just bowled over by the number of people that are here listening. I feel like poetry is a kind of call and response action. You know, the poem comes out, and the listening and the witnessing and the being present to the poem is the response, even in the silence and the quiet. So thank you for all the listeners who are here. And I also wanted to say something sort of to echo Carl. This poem is a kind of, he talked about finding prompts, looking for prompts. And I think about it as kind of hunting and gathering. The place where I often look for and find prompts are in my inbox and in my text messages. I realize that I probably write the most in those places. And so this poem came out of a text message exchange. Sweetest relief. It's not just that she gets me, I wrote to Jeanette, who lives in Phoenix, on the way down to New York in a text message on the Peter Pan bus with spotty reception. Next to Abby, who has lived on the Upper West Side for 5 years and was complaining about the lack of signage at the Springfield terminal. Jeanette had written to say, "Damn, I miss you." And then, "What have you been up to?" Which is not an easy thing to explain on the tiny keyboard of a mobile phone. "Love, baby," I wrote back. "I feel like I found a needle in a haystack." I hoped I wasn't inadvertently rubbing it in. I knew Jeanette had been in her own stew of second guessing, something gone sour these past months, but I couldn't help it. I was gushing. "So lucky," I continued. Jeanette wrote back, "That made me teary." And then, "It's no small thing," and "so very rare." And I said, yes, it was. "But it's not just that she gets me," I tapped on as the bus pulled into Hartford and I saw the line at the terminal, bare shoulders shiny from the heat, couples bearing weekend luggage and taking drowsy pulls from water bottles. I felt suddenly quite gluttonous, full of bright, buttery love for the whole world. "It's that she likes me," I wrote, even though there was no way to do the italics. "But Jeanette is a smart cookie. Grab hold of it and let it take you," I read, and the bus pulled out with something between a sigh and a squeal and a moan. "Yes," I wrote back, because there was nothing left to say. The air conditioning kicked on again, the sweetest relief, and we all settled back in our seats, bags stowed, as the bus made the turn to the highway heading west, then south. New York on the near horizon, so close I could almost see her hands stretching toward me, beckoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It's such a lovely journey on the bus that you take us on, and in the text messages. And there's a certain generosity in the poem, as well as the intimacy. It's a lot of different levels of intimacy. Thank you. Okay, our final reader for today is Annalise Giacomides from Bangor, Maine. And the poem is called My Dear One.
Thank you. I want to start by echoing other people and thanking the Poets Corner for this opportunity. And I also want to thank all of the other readers who have been phenomenal, and I'm delighted to be here. And all of the people listening out there, many of whom have shown up for me in amazing ways. And so I'm very, very grateful. The layers of a poem come together in their story of time in ways unanticipated. This poem was written in response to art. It really is an ekphrastic poem. And obviously, as you hear, in response to the layers of loss, layers that can't help but open us up if we pay attention. My dear one. My dear one, that map in my mind is so fun. Invisible universe turned vivid, pulsating fuchsia, ice crystal dams, drum wobbles, the satiny parts. Feel free to send more, little bits or big, colliding lights, gravitational lensing, dandelion poppy lolling on a blade of grass. And oh, remember that Neowise bus racing in from the outer solars on a macadam of stars? A 6,800 year trip, they say. I know, time a fathomless vapor, but still I'm moved by the looping circles of those positional numerals, tools for physical daily human minding. Do ask Aryabhata if you see him what he thinks of our current attachment to the hard measured facts we're applying to his numbering these days. The New York Times said N survived its recent closest approach to the sun. Survived, got it, not to worry. And the sooty particles, the drama, the ferreting and finding, warring and winning, suffering and pain, and constantly trying to flip the tides of heartache, the silenced voices, the latest massacre. I am grateful Mississippi has junked their old flag. The Stennis girl's new design is fab, but people won't let her. They just can't. Either way or side, reason or position, you know. Names change, hollowed bones. I know we haven't gotten this far in the multi-dimensional scale of life lesson, but I'm wondering about space and quasars. Can I think those too? Or maybe not me, but an advanced me? Cepheid variables, cosmic benchmarks for scaling galactic and extragalactic distances, calibrating the relationship between absolute luminosity and apparent brightness. That glitter of stars last night on the edge of I-95 by Alton Bog, that day on the river, sun cradling the dust of you, lungs of this universe pumping out one long letter. I won't forget, although honestly, dear one, I don't quite get it. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great way to end. What a journey that took us on. I love it. And I can't wait to see it in print because there's so much packed into that one poem. And I really like an advanced me. I forget how you started that. Not me, but an advanced me. Perhaps that's what we're all hoping for, an advanced version. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Meg now.
Well, Margaret, I also really loved the way that poem ends with, I don't quite get it. You know, I thought, what a great ending for all of it, but I do get it. Just so many wonderful ways to look at love, and what a fabulous mix of poems and poets we have here. So we're spotlighting, I think, all of the poets that just read. And if the rest of you wouldn't mind turning your cameras off, it might make it easier to see these poets. And then I want to take questions from the chat if you have any for our poets who've been reading. So just put a question or two in the chat if you like. I might kick us off by just saying, had you all written many epistolary poems before, or was this an unusual prompt, or was it something you're more familiar with? Any one of you that are our readers today that would like to address that question about epistolary poems?
Hi, yes, I've written a number of epistolary poems, and I'll tell you, it took me years to be able to learn to say that word. It's such a mouthful. But I have, as well as having written poems to someone or for someone, I also have a couple of different poet friends where over the years we've done correspondence back and forth. And that was been kind of a fun thing to do.
That is great. I remember reading something, I think it was Ted Kruger and someone else, the poems that they had written as letters back and forth to each other. What a wonderful idea.
Yes, Ted Kruger and Jim Harrison. It was published as a book. It's incredible. And then also the New Yorker did several years ago, printed an exchange between Natalie Diaz and our new US Poet Laureate, Ada Limon.
Yes, and it was actually Ellen Bass does a series of craft talks, and on her most recent series, she had Ada Limon. They talked about epistolary poems, and I thought, well, that's a different way to address this topic of love. So that's great. And so many of you talked about prompts for poems, and I'm sure many of our listeners might be poets. Some probably are not poets, but thoughts about where you get your prompts from or your ideas for poems from.
Well, I can say that the prompt will wake me up at 5:30 in the morning. And I'd better have a pen and a piece of paper there or it's gone. And so who knows where they come from, but it can be any time of day or night. And it's like a sudden thundercloud, and you better get inside or an umbrella and pay attention to it.
I agree with that completely, by the way. I think a lot of my prompts come from just life, just living, and just remembering to write it down. That's the whole trick, is writing down that one little essence of a piece of something that just happened, and not letting yourself trust memory. Especially the older I get, the more I'm like, I cannot trust memory. I have to write this down. And yeah, I enjoyed everyone today, by the way. Thank you so much for inviting me.
That's great, Debbie. And somebody wrote in the chat that they got an idea for a poem from today's poems. Mm-hmm. So that I love that we were inspiring others.
I love the epistolary form, and I've been writing epistles for years, but I really like that that sort of the you know, speaking to someone. But I also write about letters a lot, which is kind of interesting. And I've translated some things, like there's a Sor Juana poem where she's writing, and she says that in the poem, the letter, I had to swallow your letter, meaning she had to literally rip it up and swallow it, and you know, things like that were very interesting. And you asked about you know, prompts for things, and I have a poem called Love Letters, which was in my first book, which is actually a story about my mother trying to learn German because my father had come from Germany, and that she would write him letters in German, and then he would, this is the twist, it's a sestina, and the moment that it twists, it's that he would give them back to her with his corrections in the margin. So I've often joked and said, like, you know, don't do that to the letters, but was for her was kind of trying to like learn the language via it. But you know, it's that that twist, which is not exactly what we want out of the love letter. But I like writing both, you know, letters and also about the process of writing letters.
That's great. And Diane, would you put your website in the chat for folks who want to look up your books and more about you, and any of our other readers that have a book or a website they'd like to put in the chat? I will save the chat, and if anybody wants to request it afterwards, they can.
I wanted to add that sometimes I look to something that I've kind of written in a sort of expository way and sort of carve into that out, you know, carve a poem out of that. So I might not be sort of setting out to write a poem. I might just be sort of casually writing something else down. And it's almost like a game. I mean, this is not for every poem, but there's something about creating a challenge for myself to try to make a poem out of something that isn't a poem. So even recipes or, as I said, emails or text messages, they're not intended as poems when they start, but they become, I can draw from them to make something out of them, something else. And so I think it's helpful to have an existing piece of writing, at least to start with, to go from there.
That's great. I do that too. And I also save news articles that just baffle my mind, not contemporary current events type things, but science news. That just like, whoa, what is that about?
Meg, if I could chime in just to make a shout out to Catherine, having another person say to you, you should write about that. That could be a poem, is often what has happened to me. I would not think it's worthy of being put in print or words. And another person is the one who says that should be written. And Catherine is somebody who's done that often with me.
That's great. I mean, I think she's done that for so many people. Partly why so many people were on today for this dedication to her.
And if I could chime in too, just about inspiration or, sources of prompts. I mean, I agree with you so much, Meg, about newspapers. It's just a continual stream of just things that are totally unbelievable and, capture your imagination. I did write one poem about the wildfires in California because I'd read an article about a man who had lost everything but found a single live tomato plant in his garden. That had to be a poem, and then also sometimes for me, it's a point of pain. When Russia invaded Ukraine, I could do nothing with all of that emotion except donate money and write a poem. And so I think sometimes that's it for me too. But ideas come from all over the place.
Peter, I'm looking at you and I'm wondering what inspired you to write from the point of view of somebody who already died. That was such a fun poem.
I'm not sure. I kind of probably just started with those couple first lines. It's funny how it didn't really dawn on me that was the situation until I was done. I can't say what inspired me. Talking about prompts. To me, prompt is just something that gets me started. I don't really know what I'm going to write about, but anything.
I'm going to agree with you there, Peter. You just kind of show up and receive what comes in, and then figure out where it's going to take you is normally how it works for me. And I will say, in terms of my talking about that having been an ekphrastic poem, I think that if you just open up any art book and look at various images, there are a gazillion lines that will flow through your brain that may take you somewhere or nowhere, but they are all openings. It's pretty miraculous to me how that works.
That's great. And we do an ekphrastic open call usually in the fall with Page Gallery, and they post all the images in their gallery show online, and then we invite people to write poems in response to those images. And it's a really fun event. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I am seeing a lot of people posting their websites of our readers. Thank you for doing that. So I do know that people sometimes like to actually see the poems afterwards. So if you want to send me, anybody who wants to send me a note that they'd like their poems shared with the readers, I can share that with the people that signed up for today's event. And it has been recorded. And so if you know somebody who wasn't able to be here, and in the next day or two, it'll be on our website under events and past events. So if there's no further questions, I want to say thank you again to all of our poets. This was just, I had so much fun. Thank you, Margaret, for co-hosting with me. It just allowed me to kind of sit back and listen a little bit more in the second half, which was really fun. And I've been inspired by all of you and all the ways to think about love. What a setup for Valentine's Day and whatever else. That's great. And I'd encourage anybody to come back on March 5th to hear Laura Bonazzoli read from her book, Consecration Pond, and Morgan Talty read from Night of the Living Res, both wonderful story collections. And I think you'll enjoy that reading as well. So we hope to see you all again. And we thank you all for coming and for being here.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. See y'all soon.